My name is Lulu, and in my family, silence wasn't just a trait, it was almost a crime. I grew up in a house full of loud voices, strong opinions, and a proud military tradition that stretched back generations. My father was a decorated colonel. My mother served in logistics during the border conflicts. My older sister, Isolda, wore her uniform like armor and walked like she'd been born on a battlefield. And then there was me, quiet, soft-spoken, and always 3 steps behind. At least, that's how they saw me. From a young age, I learned that in our family, being real military meant taking up space. You had to speak up fast, train hard, and look ready to fight even at breakfast. But I didn't fit that mold. I read books instead of running drills. I liked strategy games, not sparring. And I observed, always observed. To them, that made me fragile. Weak. "You're not built for this," my uncle once said during dinner, chuckling as he passed the potatoes. "Lulu's more nurse than soldier." Everyone laughed, except me. I wasn't angry, just tired. But it was my sister who made it hurt. Isolda was everything I wasn't: loud, confident, admired. She didn't mean to be cruel. At least, I don't think she did. But she didn't understand me, and worse, she didn't try. She'd cut me off mid-sentence. Correct me in front of others. When we entered basic together, she told our instructors I had anxious tendencies just to prepare them. She thought she was helping. What she really did was set the stage for how everyone saw me. I still remember the day I learned she signed my medical waiver without asking me. She forged my initials on a mental health screening form, said it was no big deal. I was furious. Not just at her, but at myself for being so invisible that someone else could speak for me without blinking. That night, I sat in the barracks alone and stared at the bunk above mine. I didn't cry. I didn't even write in my journal. Something shifted. I realized I didn't need anyone's permission to exist. And I definitely didn't need their protection. That was the beginning of a quiet transformation. While everyone else was shouting, I started listening deeply. Not just to words, but to patterns. Who always volunteered first? Who froze during training drills? Which officers double-checked the locks before lights out, and which ones didn't? I noticed everything. I began keeping a notebook. At first, it was just names, shifts, details. Then it became a kind of personal map, a record of how the system moved, how people behaved under pressure. I stopped reacting to the way they treated me. I started studying it. But my silence didn't go unnoticed. "You never talk," one of my squad mates said during lunch. "It's kinda creepy." Others joked that I was a ghost. I let them laugh. Let them think what they wanted. Inside, I was building something. A version of me no one had seen yet, not even myself. Back home, my family kept treating me like the tag-along. Every phone call felt like a performance review. "Are you keeping up? Are you sure this is right for you? Maybe you should consider admin work." I stopped answering most of their calls, not out of spite, just self-preservation. The more I pulled away, the more I began to trust my own voice, even if I didn't use it much. In training, I stuck to the shadows, but I always finished strong. I never missed a mark. I passed every exam, often in the top 10%. But still, the praise went to others. Flashier people. Louder ones. People like Isolda, who knew how to shine. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted to be taken seriously. The funny thing is, when people think you're quiet, they assume you're not watching. But I was. Every day. Every mistake. Every strength. Every crack in the armor. I saw how the chain of command wavered when real stress hit. I saw how easily people panicked when drills got messy. I saw who relied on instinct and who actually thought. And through it all, I stayed still. Gathering, preparing. What they didn't realize is, I wasn't trying to fit into their definition of real military. I was building my own. One built on clarity, calm, and control. Not volume. And soon, they'd see what that kind of strength looked like when it mattered most. One morning during advanced field training, I strained my left calf climbing a cargo net. The pain shot through me instantly, sharp and deep. But I landed on my feet and kept moving, finished the whole circuit. Hours later, the ache hadn't faded, and I finally limped to the medic station. The nurse on duty was a young recruit, probably newer than me, but she wrapped the leg in ice and started filling out the injury report. "Protocol says we notify your emergency contact," she said without looking up. I nodded. "It's my sister, Isolde Whitlow." She froze for a second, then checked her tablet. "It says here." She already signed the form. Checked the box for no contact necessary. She looked confused. I didn't ask how, didn't ask when. I just said, "Got it," and walked out. Because really, what else was there to say? Of course she did. That night, I rewrapped the calf myself. No one asked if I was okay. I didn't expect them to. I propped my leg on a crate and stared at the bottom of the bunk above me, letting the silence stretch. My mind drifted back to a time I hadn't thought about in years. I was 19 and had collapsed from dehydration after working 2 weeks straight at a crisis shelter during a heat wave. I woke up in a hospital bed, dizzy and weak. I remember wondering if Isolde had been told. She was stationed less than an hour away. She never showed up. Later, Dad just said, "She's busy, don't take it personal." I didn't, but I remembered. At 32, I didn't need excuses anymore. I needed a plan. So, I stopped journaling. I stopped wasting pages on how I felt or who hurt me. Instead, I started sketching tactical layouts. Diagrams. Timelines. I logged every odd pattern, every supply inconsistency, every deviation in command schedules. Not because I needed proof. Because I was preparing. If they wanted to keep playing games, that was fine. But I was done being the one caught off guard. I uploaded everything to a private, encrypted drive. Everything I saw, everything I heard. Every missed check-in. Every joke made at my expense. I wasn't paranoid, I was ready. Then came the field op that changed everything. We were told it was going to be a large simulation, multi-unit coordination, stress response, command assessment. No surprises, they said. But halfway through the exercise, just as we were finishing a mock evacuation drill, the alarms sounded, not the normal ones. These were sharper, deeper. Real. Comm links exploded with static. Then a single line broke through. "Security breach confirmed. Initiate lockdown protocol." Panic hit fast. People yelled. Officers barked out orders that didn't make sense. Some reached for weapons. Others froze. No one knew if it was real or another test. I didn't move. I didn't panic. I rolled up my sleeve. The scanner on my wrist blinked once. Then again. Then glowed. A line of code appeared: KLL's URM 3 active clearance. Only 3 on base had clearance to recognize what that meant. Only one of us acted. Within minutes, a black helicopter roared in over the ridge and landed on the field. Recruits scattered from the rotor wash. Papers flew. Then General Halden stepped out. No fuss, no ceremony. Just the kind of quiet that makes people pay attention. He walked straight toward me, past all the officers, all the shouting, and said, loudly and clearly, "As of this moment, you report to her." Everything stopped. Total silence. Then I stepped forward. Calm, clear. "Lock down the outer perimeter," I said. "North and east sectors are compromised. Reroute Squad Delta to assist with evac control. Do not engage unless fired upon." And just like that, they moved. They obeyed. Even the ones who used to laugh. Even the ones who called me background noise. Across the field, I saw Isolde. She didn't speak. Didn't salute. Just stared at me like she was seeing a stranger with her face. That look said it all. Confused, shaken, maybe even proud. But it didn't matter, because I wasn't standing there for her anymore. That drill ended 3 hours later. It turned out the breach was simulated, a hidden test inside the test. But it wasn't about the drill anymore. The point had been made. And I didn't need anyone's approval to prove it. That same evening, I was relocated to a temporary command unit near the operations trailer. No celebration, no official announcement, just a quiet shift. People stood straighter when I walked by. The whispers behind my back stopped. Not because they finally respected me, but because now they were watching me. I could feel the difference. It wasn't admiration. It was calculation. They were trying to figure out how I went from invisible to indispensable. But I didn't give them anything to read. I kept my face neutral, my steps measured, and my notes thorough. I had a mission now. And I wasn't looking back. Later that night, I reached for my notepad to write the after-action report. But something else slipped out. A small folded piece of paper, edges worn soft from being handled. It was a child's drawing crayon lines forming a figure in uniform. Blue and red for the jacket, boots a little too big. At the bottom, in crooked handwriting, to the silent soldier. I remembered her instantly. A little girl from the base cafeteria. A week ago, she had dropped her juice, and I helped her clean it up without saying a word. She looked up at me and asked if I was a real soldier. I nodded. She smiled and said, "You're quiet. That means you're strong." I had forgotten that moment until now. Holding that paper, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. Not for my rank or my clearance code, but for something deeper, I cried. Just for a few minutes. Not out of pain or anger, but from something like release. Like finally letting go of something I'd been carrying too long. When I went to turn in my report, I passed by the command tent. Isolde was there. She stood near the entrance, arms crossed like she'd been waiting. "I didn't know," she said, not meeting my eyes. I kept walking. Then, she added, "I didn't stop walking either. I was trying to protect you." I paused just long enough for her to think I might respond. But I didn't. Not because I hated her. Not even because I was angry. I just didn't need her anymore. And sometimes, the real closure isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose. Like locking a door from your side. The next morning, I went to the debriefing room. General Halden stood by the window, no uniform this time, just a plain shirt and slacks. He looked like a man who had finally taken off the role, even if only for a few hours. He didn't speak right away. "Let me sit, let the room settle." Then he said, "This won't be the last time someone questions how you got here. But it should be the last time you do." I nodded. "Understood, sir." He didn't ask about Isolde or my past. He handed me a file. A new assignment classified. Not a punishment. Not even a warning. Just an upgrade. "Use your silence," he added, almost like an inside joke. "And your judgment." I shook his hand. Walked outside. The sun was just beginning to warm the air. By noon, the whole base knew. Not just about the drill or the helicopter, but about me. No one joked about my wrist anymore. No one mocked the tattoo or the silence or the fact that I kept to myself. Even Brady, the same guy who once laughed at me during target drills, was nowhere to be found. Word was he got reassigned to admin. Off base. Quietly. No send-off. That evening, I started packing. My cot was already stripped. My boots lined up. Gear squared away. At the bottom of my duffel, under my field jacket, I found Mom's letter. The paper was soft now, the folds permanent. I didn't need to read it again. I just opened it, smoothed it flat, slid it into the inner pocket of my pack. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was a part of my armor. As I crossed the base one last time, everything felt still. The tarmac glowed under the floodlights. A chopper waited near the far end, rotors still, the crew silent. I didn't carry much. Just the pack on my back, the code on my wrist, and a memory tucked deep inside that nobody could touch. Through the admin building's glass, I saw Isolde. She sat alone at a desk. Shoulders slouched, coffee in hand, staring at a window like it had just appeared. She didn't move. Neither did I. And then I did. I walked on. Inside the hangar, there was a mirror by the lockers. Nothing special, just standard issue. I paused. Not to check my hair or adjust my collar. I just looked. And for the first time, I wasn't searching for approval. I was checking for alignment, and I was exactly where I needed to be. The flight out was quiet. I sat by the window, eyes scanning the clouds, the endless stretch of sky. There's something strange about leaving a place that once defined you. You expect it to feel dramatic, loud, maybe even triumphant. But instead, it just feels calm. Like you've finally stopped arguing with gravity. I didn't know exactly where they were sending me. The file had coordinates, not a name. But I knew enough now to understand that sometimes the mission finds you when you're ready, not when you're loud enough. We landed at a remote station tucked deep between snow-capped ridges. Smaller team. Tighter protocols. Everyone moved with purpose, but no one shouted. I liked that. The silence here wasn't judgment. It was discipline. Respect. One of the officers met me at the landing zone astern, but not cold. "We don't do ranks here," she said as she handed me a new badge. "Just roles." I clipped it on without a word. The next few weeks were a blur. High-level briefings. Simulations that felt more like chess matches than combat drills. My job wasn't just tactical, it was strategic. I worked in patterns, scenarios, what-ifs. I started seeing things differently. Like how small changes in communication could shift entire outcomes. How silence in the right moment was louder than any command. I didn't just grow, I sharpened. There were nights I would sit outside the operations tent, staring at the stars, and think about my family. I imagined them around a dinner table, someone bringing up my name like it was still a mystery. I wondered if they knew. If they heard, if they finally saw me as more than just the odd one out. But it didn't sting anymore. Not like it used to. Because the truth was, their version of real had never fit me anyway. One morning, I was asked to lead a simulation. High stakes. Multiple moving parts. A live response drill with half a dozen units depending on my timing. As I stepped up to the control deck, I caught my reflection in the glass. No fear. No doubt. Just focus. The countdown began. Lights flashed. Voices called in. I moved without hesitation. Issued instructions with calm certainty. Every decision had weight, but none of it felt heavy. After it ended, the commanding officer clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Clean execution," she said. "You're the kind of quiet that makes people listen." I smiled, not because I needed the praise, but because I finally believed it myself. One evening, I got a message through secure comms. Short. Just a few words. "You made us proud, Dad." No punctuation, no details, but I knew it was real. And maybe that's all I ever needed from him, not a full apology, not even understanding, just acknowledgement. The kind that doesn't try to rewrite the past, but meets you where you are. Later that week, I got reassigned again. Not because I failed, because I finished. They needed me somewhere else. A quiet crisis unfolding. No headlines, no parades. Just another chance to do what I do best. Stay calm, see clearly, move fast. I didn't hesitate. Packed my things. Left a small note on my bunk for the next person. You don't need to be loud to lead. The night before I left, I stood at the edge of the base. Cold wind brushing my skin. The stars looked sharper out here, like they knew they were being watched. I didn't think about what came next. I didn't need to. I had become the kind of soldier who didn't chase permission anymore. I followed purpose. And maybe that's what makes you real in the end, not the patch on your shoulder or the approval of people who never understood you. But the choices you make when no one's looking. The moments when you trust your silence more than the world's noise. And now, as I look back at the road that brought me here, I realize it was never about proving them wrong. It was always about proving to myself that I belonged, even if no one else thought so. I used to think validation had to come from outside, from louder voices, from louder footsteps. But the truth is, the strongest conviction is the one that grows quietly, one day at a time, through action, not noise. I never wanted to be the loudest person in the room. I just wanted to serve, to do something meaningful, and to know I had done it with integrity. That wristband lighting up didn't just change how they saw me, it changed how I saw myself. For the first time, I didn't feel like an imposter or a disappointment. I felt steady, solid, whole. Maybe you're listening to this right now, feeling unseen or misunderstood. Maybe your family doesn't understand your choices. Maybe they've made you feel small for taking a path that isn't traditional, that doesn't look successful on the surface. But trust me, your value isn't in their approval. Your value is in your courage to keep going, even when no one claps for you. There's power in walking your path quietly, in choosing discipline over drama, in trusting that your time will come not with fireworks, but with clarity. It's okay if they laugh. It's okay if they never get it. You're not here to fit their mold, you're here to become someone they could never imagine. What I've learned is this: you don't need to wear the same uniform to serve with honor. You don't need to fit a certain image to make a real impact. And sometimes, the most important battles aren't the ones others see, but the ones you win within yourself. So stand tall, even when they don't understand you. Move forward, even when they question you. And when your moment comes, when that invisible signal lights up, showing the world who you really are, don't wait for applause. You've already won. Because the truth is, you've been real all along.